Overlord was born on Cybertron's second moon 4.2 million years ago, a rare breed known as a 0.1 percenter. After its first flash killed the hapless miners who discovered it, his spark was taken by the Functionist Council's Authenticator 3 of 12. In the days before the Cybertronian Civil War, Overlord was both an avid spectator of Megatron's gladiatorial matches and a participant in the bouts, even fighting Megatron himself. Megatron would be the only opponent to ever defeat Overlord, and he did so regularly, giving Overlord a pathological fear of defeat. All the same, Overlord still joined Megatron's Decepticon faction upon its founding, though it was not for the loftiness of the Decepticon cause that Megatron espoused which enticed him. Rather, it was the chance to have the glorious excess of the gladiator battles move beyond the arena to encompass entire worlds. To Overlord, the ends didn't matter overly much when the means themselves were this pleasurable. As a result, his tactics developed a reputation as unsound, and his schemes as nothing more than flights of brutal whimsy. Unlike many other powerful Decepticons, he had no interest in command, only in taking his slaughter to the next stage. Megatron was not convinced, however, believing the image of Overlord as simply interested in killing to be a facade, and began searching for a way to exert greater control over him. Recognizing Overlord's power, Megatron regularly sparred with him, and eventually, 3 million years ago, selected him to be the fourth candidate for an upgrade process that would transform him into a world-shatteringly powerful super warrior. Rendered virtually indestructible by an infusion of Unutrium to his endoskeleton, Overlord's first action as a member of the Warriors Elite was to smash out of his capsule and kill the scientist who oversaw the process, Rosum. He could not, however, do the same to Megatron. The Decepticon leader had not been so foolish, and had, during the upgrade process, had Shockwave equip Overlord with both a kill switch that could deactivate him, and infect him with an Achilles virus that caused an tactical blind spot, preventing him from figuring out how to harm Megatron. When Soundwave was captured by the Autobots and brought to the new Institute for Brainwashing, Overlord saw his chance to free himself from these shackles. While ostensibly attacking the facility to rescue Soundwave, he also captured the Cerebra scientist Trepan and studied the basics of neurosurgery. That one's always hard to say. Menosurgery from him, intending to hack Shockwave's memories and learn how to deactivate his kill switch and the virus. Megatron caught wind of Overlord's scheming before he learned how to interface with others and had Trepan killed. Overlord later participated in the battle for Hell's Point alongside the other members of the Warriors Elite. While embroiled in battle on Khaldun 4, Overlord was called to do a teleconference with Megatron, who announced the finalization of his infiltration protocol, and that Overlord would join fellow Warriors Elite Sixshot and Black Shadow in being reclassified as Phase Sixers, called into an alien world to enact the doomsday scenario of the protocol's final phase. Dissatisfied with being declared a weapon that operated at someone else's whim, Overlord contested his appointment, and Megatron gave him two options: do as he was told, or refuse and have Megatron hunt him down. Overlord made his choice quickly, returning to battle outside and dispatching every Autobot save one, Cup, who he allowed to survive so a message could be sent to Megatron. Overlord had chosen option 2. He proceeded to leave Khaldun 4 to plan for Megatron's inevitable coming. For his treason, Overlord found his way onto the infamous list of traitors maintained by the Decepticon Justice Division. Sometime later, Overlord initiated a conflict with the Emperor of a star system who was in possession of interstellar travel capabilities and weapons technology that rivaled his own. Finding himself overmatched, Overlord sought and secured the aid of Gorlock's Decepticon Battalion, which, at the time, was assigned to Spencifax B. Spencifax. Come on, guys. Spencifax B. This is going to be a tough video. The ensuing battle, according to the estimates of Science Officer Vivisector, set the technological development of the Empire back an estimated 250,000 years. At the height of the cross-galactic Decepticon uprising, Overlord arrived at Garrus 9 in the midst of the Decepticon siege of the prison, and casually murdered garrison leader Skyquake when he refused to turn command over to him. Intending to turn Garrus 9 into his home away from home, Overlord personally defeated Warden Fortress Maximus and threw him into the crowd of Decepticon prisoners he had freed, as a show of good faith. Overlord was not done with Maximus, though, later imprisoning him and personally torturing him for information on the Aquatus computer hidden in the bowels of Garrus 9, and the mysterious secret of the prison that the computer had been created to hide. Maximus refused to give up the passcodes to the device's chamber, even after Overlord threatened to kill an Autobot for every second that he withheld them. During his time in command of Garrus 9, Overlord turned the prison into a huge gladiatorial arena, and had the prisoners fight for their lives with the promise that victory meant freedom. This was, of course, a lie. Those who won in 12 bouts were offered the choice of facing Overlord himself or committing suicide. Overlord forced the imprisoned Grimlock to watch footage both of these matches and of the sacking of the prison, possibly driving him insane. After a year of this, some of the Decepticons began to have doubts about their sadistic leader. Fearswoop was lucky to survive when he questioned Overlord's lack of sportsmanship, but Wingblazer and his partner were not so fortunate when they let an Autobot prisoner get the better of them during a hunt, and Overlord killed them for their carelessness. Around this time, Overlord also released Shockwave from confinement and let him leave in return for the Achilles virus being removed. Shockwave could tell that all Overlord was doing with Garrus 9 was trying to get Megatron's attention, though Overlord denied it. 2 years later, Overlord and his Decepticons watched the captive Autobot Kickoff battle the Decepticon Borehole for his amusement. Kickoff triumphed and was taken to Overlord's quarters, where he was offered the customary choice. He evidently opted to fight Overlord, given the brutalized state of his body when it was later found. Not long after, the Autobot strike team known as the Wreckers arrived to liberate Garrus 9. One of their drop pods crashed into the arena chamber right in front of Overlord's feet. Although disappointed to discover that the new arrivals were not troops sent by Megatron, Overlord was amused by the joke made by Rotorstorm about Wreckers combining, right before he shot him through the head. The Wreckers turned down Overlord's proposal of surrender, but were unable to injure him, and escaped into the prison by detonating a fuel tank to cover their withdrawal. Regrouping with help from the Decepticon Snare, who had come to believe that the Decepticons on Garrus 9 were as trapped by Overlord as the Autobots were, the Wreckers established a new mission objective: to kill Overlord. They did not have to hunt him down, however, as he soon arrived to take them on. The fight quickly made its way to the rooftop of Garrus 9, where Guzzle was torn in half and used to dispatch Cup. A harpoon through the eye, courtesy of Impactor, barely phased Overlord, who delivered a defeat more crushing than any beating. The Autobot prisoners the Wreckers had come to liberate had all been executed on his orders already. Overlord proved able even to shrug off the massive payload of a huge chain gun-like weapon provided to Springer by Iron Fist. But after all the other Autobots around him had been dispatched, Iron Fist revealed the weapon's secret. It had injected Overlord with 1,000 of deterrence chips, which Iron Fist then remotely detonated, reducing Overlord to a flaming, yet still functioning skeleton. Iron Fist fell unconscious, leaving only Verity Carlo to hear Overlord's wrathful ranting, as he demanded to know how he could meet a challenge from Megatron in this sorry state. Realizing this was what Overlord had longed for all along, Verity dropped the bomb. Megatron was dead. Overlord was stunned by the realization that while he had dedicated every waking hour of his existence to his supposedly inevitable fight with Megatron, the Decepticon leader had never cared and would never come. He put up no resistance when Impactor recovered, but Impactor refused to kill Overlord for Springer's sake and promised to take him to face justice. Bumblebee believed that the Autobots had a moral obligation to return POWs to their natural state, so he had the Decepticon's body rebuilt. Prowl, intent on learning from Overlord the secrets of the process that created the Phase Sixers, acquiesced to Bumblebee's decision in hopes it would encourage Overlord to talk, and released a cover story that claimed the villain's spark had been extracted and sealed in a whiteout vacuum. In the wake of Cybertron's rebirth following the Chaos event, Prowl petitioned Chrome Dome to use his, here's the word again, you guys know what it is, the surgery skills, to read Overlord's memories in the hopes of creating an army of Autobot Phase Sixers. But Chrome Dome refused. Learning that Chrome Dome was leaving Cybertron aboard the Lost Light, Prowl convinced Rodimus to allow him to put Overlord on the Lost Light. At launch, he had the duo bots secretly load Overlord aboard the ship and instructed Drift to talk to Chrome Dome around to his way of thinking when the time was right. As a security measure, Overlord was held within a slow cell in which time passed much more slowly. When the Lost Light launched, an accident on board caused a massive quantum explosion, and as a result, the ship was split into two identical copies, one on course and one off of course, each containing an identical Overlord. On the on-course Lost Light, Rodimus died in an accident with a Spark Eater, after which Drift came clean to Ultra Magnus, who proceeded to inform the rest of the crew. When Brainstorm, a deep cover double agent with Decepticon ties, was contacted by his Decepticon handler and deemed proof of his loyalty to the Decepticon cause, the Autobot panicked and put through a call to the Decepticon Justice Division, sabotaging Overlord's slow cell so that the DJD could detect his energy signature. The DJD initially agreed not to harm the crew of the Lost Light so as to maintain his cover, but re-engaged when they discovered Drift aboard the ship. The DJD proceeded to slaughter the entire crew of the Lost Light, before finally going to chop off Overlord's head off with a saw. Crossing Overlord's name off the list, the DJD left the shattered wreckage of the Lost Light behind in orbit of Ofsted 17. On the off-course Lost Light, the other Overlord remained a prisoner of the Autobots. When a crack was cut in the cell by the stowaway Spark Eater, paranoid security director Red Alert began hearing noises emanating from within. After recording the noises and discovering, with aid from Rung, that it was a massively slowed down voice repeated, "Kill me," Red Alert widened the crack and discovered the cell's occupant, but was mysteriously deactivated in an alleged suicide before he could tell anyone. After Chrome Dome's Conjux Endura Rewind was grievously injured in battle, the possibility of losing Rewind was enough to convince Chrome Dome to begin visiting the Slow Cell to probe Overlord's mind in a series of mental interrogation sessions, gradually acclimatizing himself to the Decepticon's mental architecture. As a safeguard in the event of Overlord's escape, he subtly altered the Decepticon's memory so as to make him associate the phrase "till all are one" with defeat in combat, knowing that Rodimus would undoubtedly say this in battle and give the Autobots a potential opening to take down the stunned Decepticon. During the last of these sessions, however, Chrome Dome made a fatal mistake when he inadvertently revealed to Overlord that Megatron was still alive. Spurred back to action, Overlord used the menosurgery tricks he had learned from Japan to take over their mental link and plucked the code for the slow cell from Chrome Dome's memories. Bursting free from his restraints, he opened the cell and sealed Chrome Dome in, then proceeded to go on a rampage through the ship, first stomping Pipes to death, then attacking Ratchet in the medibay. The assembled crew of the ship confronted him in battle, during which Overlord stabbed Ultra Magnus through the spark, then turned on Rodimus, asking him for his last words. When Rodimus replied with, "Till all are one," however, the phrase tripped Overlord's mnemonic trigger. You guys know what I mean. Allowing him to be herded back into the slow cell by Fortress Maximus so that he could be jettisoned from the ship. At the last moment, however, the plan was nearly thwarted when one of Overlord's stolen swords was lodged in the cell doors. As the only bot small enough to remove it, Rewind squeezed through the gap and pulled the sword free, allowing the cell to jettison, but trapping himself inside with Overlord. Overlord gleefully began torturing the little Autobot before Chrome Dome, in an act of mercy, used the ship's guns to destroy the floating cell. Overlord's still living but inert body was left drifting in space. Approximately 6 months later, the crew of the surviving Lost Light encountered the wreck of the quantum-duplicated over Offsteed 17, following the disappearance of their own vessel. Nautica and Nightbeat discovered Overlord's headless corpse in the slow cell. This, combined with numerous other historical inconsistencies and the atrocities found by the others, led the Lost Lighters to figure out that they were aboard a quantum duplicate version of their ship that had been visited by the DJD. The alternate Overlord's corpse vanished with the rest of the wrecked Lost Light when the main Lost Light was restored to reality. In the meantime, the other Overlord was recovered and rebuilt by the Galactic Council. After a lengthy recuperation process, the Council deployed him to the homeworld of the Necrobot and to take down Megatron, whose recent defection to the Autobots threatened to undermine the anti-Cybertronian sentiment that the Council had spent years cultivating amongst its members. Overlord interrupted a one-sided battle between his old tormentor and the DJD commander Tarn, declaring that he only was allowed to kill Megatron. Overlord attacked Tarn, distracting both from noticing the crippled Megatron escaping on a hover scooter. Seeing that their goals were overlapped, Tarn brought Overlord in as a temporary ally. Aboard the peaceful Tyranny, Overlord immediately began undermining Tarn's command by trying to sow doubt in the minds of Deathsaurus, while openly mocking the DJD. The DJD's image didn't benefit from a panicked Kaon begging Tarn to save his captured pet. Overlord watched as Tarn decapitated Kaon, and then jammed his severed head into Overlord's chest, telling him he wouldn't be mocked by such a desperate attention seeker. When sundown came, Overlord stood with Tarn and Deathsaurus, a big smirk on his face, as they prepared to storm the Autobots. After swatting Cyclonus to the floor, he gleefully sought out Chrome Dome and began to mock him with claims of what he had done to Rewind. So Chrome Dome decked him, the first obvious sight the Autobots were charged with something. Once the charge ran out, though, Megatron finally emerged to tear through the Decepticons. And Overlord dismissed this as just him getting a gun back. Bored and finding it easy to now shoot him down, Overlord concluded that Megatron had become a coward, and disgusted by his change of heart, grimly told Tarn that he didn't need Megatron anymore before flying off. Overlord spent the next few years aimlessly wandering, bored with life, before coming in contact with the exiled mad scientist Tarantulas, stationed on Earth. The two formed a partnership after arriving on Earth. Overlord agreed to become a test subject for Tarantulas' ever-evolving Chimericon process. through Tarantulas' mad science, Overlord gained a third human-based disguise. In this guise, he was able to forge an identity for himself as Megan... they always have these names. Guiglione. Megan Guiglione, a populist anti-Cybertronian politician aiming to sow discord throughout Earth's political system as its inhabitants struggled to adjust to life under the Council of Worlds. Not only could Guiglione secure funding and resources for Tarantulas' latest plans, but Tarantulas was also fascinated by the effects that Megan had on the government of the United States, seeing it as a twisted social experience. At one rally, Megan was attacked by Springer, who had been temporarily brainwashed by members of Mayhem and puppeteered into annihilating the firebrand politician, but only succeeded in revealing Overlord. Overlord promptly resumed his normal robot mode and slaughtered the Mayhem operatives who attempted to engage him. Intrigued by the reappearance of Verity at this meeting, Overlord abducted her and returned to the dormant volcano where he and Tarantulas had established their base. There, Tarantulas revealed the Time Maze, a functional time machine through which Tarantulas would send Overlord back in time over and over, and his actions would create an infinity of new timelines for Tarantulas to play with. Overlord, however, revealed that he had no interest in being Tarantulas' lackey anymore. Instead, he would use the Time Maze to travel back in time and kill Megatron, wiping him from this reality and every alternate universe that he might happen to spring up in. He punctuated this statement and his partnership with Tarantulas by shooting the spider in the back of the head. Before he could enter the machine, however, Springer and Impactor arrived. Tackling Springer, the two plummeted into the volcano's caldera, causing a landslide that temporarily separated the combatants from one another. By the time Overlord found his feet and advanced on the two Autobots, Impactor sacrificed himself by allowing Springer to fire through him, giving him the opportunity to make a break for the Time Maze, with Overlord in hot pursuit. As Overlord caught up to Springer, however, the villainous Phase Sixer was paralyzed by a sonic howl from Carnivac, forcing both halves of his body to involuntarily assume their alternate modes. Taking advantage of this paralysis, Springer and Verity were able to send his jet half into the distant future and then send his tank half plummeting into the distant past. Whew, that one had a lot of words I didn't know how to pronounce. I'll never understand how to pronounce Nemo surgery. Finding Nemo surgery. Should probably do a video on what that one means.